All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Mike Braun and Jennifer McCormick already are gearing up for a tough general election. Braun easily won Tuesday's primary despite facing 5 challengers. He talked to our government reporter, Garrett Bergquist, shortly after his victory speech.
Well, it took only a little over an hour for Mike Braun to lock up the Republican nomination. Senator, how are you feeling tonight?
Well, whenever you do something like this, or like when I was talking about running for Senate, those are hard efforts, and you enter into them knowing all the things you might run into. And back then, it was a different dynamic. Here it was one where it would have been a lot easier to probably run for re-elect to a second Senate term. I wouldn't have done that more than 2 terms. I felt there was more potential coming back here. And I'm going to craft an agenda for Hoosiers, I think, that'll take us to a place we've never been before, based upon freedom, opportunity, and knowing how the system works in government to improve everybody's lot in this state. And I look forward to do that. Yeah.
In your victory speech, you spoke of the need to have a thick skin and then to forgive. And you said you've fielded calls from some of your primary rivals pledging their support. How did those calls go?
So everyone is called other than one, and I assume that'll be soon, along with Governor Holcomb, and I like that. So we're going to circle the wagons to make sure we as Republicans, carry the day in November. And I think I'm going to bring a lot of people along that haven't come along before, and I look forward to that. So I view it as a challenge. As much as I savored building that little business over 37 years into a regional, then national company, blessed with 3 of my 4 kids actually in it, I put this on that same level. And proud of the Senate record. I just think you can do more back here.
And how do you bring those voters on board, both the ones who might not have considered you before or else the people who came out in this primary but supported someone else?
So they need to check around, talk to people that know me and know that I get along with almost everyone, but I stick to my principles. I just figure out innovative ways to get things done. That's generally appealing to most people.
In terms of switching from the Senate to the governorship, what's the most appealing part of that as opposed to staying in the Senate?
I was one of 100 in a place where you're told to just do nothing for 6 years and learn the system. We've been one of the most effective Republican legislators in the last Congress, and we will in this one again. We've done a lot in terms of constituent services for Hoosiers, solved 13,000 cases where Hoosiers get entangled with the federal government. Imagine what you can do when you can set the agenda and work with the legislature to actually work on real issues that are going to be helpful to all Hoosiers if you get it right. And that's the nature of being an entrepreneur and a politician at the same time.
Senator Mike Braun is now the Republican nominee for governor. Senator, thank you for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And Braun already has announced his preferred pick for lieutenant governor. On Wednesday, he announced he will campaign to put State Representative Julie McGuire in for that job. She's a first-term state representative from Perry Township in Marion County. This is set up a fight now for the lieutenant governor nomination at the state Republican Party convention next month. Pastor Mike Braun has been campaigning for the job for months now. Convention delegates make the final decision on who will join Braun on that ticket. Meanwhile, Jennifer McCormick was unopposed in the Democratic primary, and she tells me she plans to keep her campaign bipartisan and focused on the issues that affect Hoosiers every day. On the Democratic side, Jennifer McCormick is now the nominee. Dr. McCormick, good to see you. Congratulations. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So you now know that you're up against Mike Braun. How confident are you that you can beat him?
I'm ready to go. We're confident. We're on the correct side of issues, and we've got great bipartisan support. We've got a great grassroots coalition, and we're ready to get this done.
How does it, now that you know who the other candidate is, how does that change how you campaign going forward?
You know, we've been campaigning in a way that is very bipartisan in a strong way. We're also traveling all 92 counties. We're making sure that we're developing that great grassroots coalition that is strong and that is large. And so we'll continue to do what we're doing, stay focused on the issues that Hoosiers are concerned about in their daily lives, meaning good paying jobs and education for their kids and child care and, you know, restoring our reproductive rights and freedoms. So we're going to continue what we've been doing, and we're ready to go for November.
I know it's early, but for people out there who maybe are undecided, tell them what the difference is between you and Senator Braun.
Yeah, and that difference is clear. So I am going to fight to restore those women's reproductive rights and freedoms and fight for the independence of all women. I'm also going to fight for education, in particular, 90% of our families that choose public education and good paying jobs. And I'm also going to fight for environmental issues. We deserve to have our water. So the differences are clear. I also believe that we're better if we're not focused on fear and chaos, if we're focused on optimism and opportunity. And again, the choices could not be clearer. So I would assume that from this point on, you and your team get together and you have conversations about the type of voter that you're going to be focusing in on, right? Did that change tonight? You know, we know we're really, really focused on energizing the Democratic vote and the independents. And now we know, too, that we've had already great bipartisan support. But there were 60% of the voters tonight that showed us that they did not like their choice of Braun. And we welcome them to join us. You know, people don't want fear and chaos. We want someone who will approach the State House with balance in a bipartisan way, who will stay focused on the issues that impact our daily lives. We deserve to have a bipartisan common sense and a civil situation in that governor's office. And that's what I intend to bring. And we will focus on all Hoosiers that want to join us. What do the next few months look like for you? They're going to be extremely busy. They're going to be extremely exciting. And again, we welcome all to join us. We'll stay focused on those issues, and people can go to McCormickforGov.com if they want to help us out, donate, volunteer. And we're just going to be really busy traveling, listening. We have town halls that are coming up again. Those have been extremely well attended and well received, that people appreciate we're out listening and getting into the voters and having conversations. When you have these conversations, what are you hearing about the most? I'm hearing a lot of commonalities. We have Republicans and Democrats and independents and libertarians that are showing up. And we're trying to find those commonalities to move Indiana forward. We're also hearing people are tired, they're frustrated, they're ready for change. And so they're very open about that. And they're trying to do their homework on the candidates. And I commend them. But I keep telling them, if you're wanting someone to bring back that stable but yet move Indiana forward, we have an option for them. Well, Dr. McCormick, again, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you so much. And that's not the only big decision voters made. Dr. Valerie McCray easily defeated Mark Carmichael in the Democratic U.S. Senate primary. She will face Congressman Jim Banks, who was unopposed, and Libertarian Andrew Horning. In the 5th congressional district, meanwhile, Victoria Spartz survived challenges from 8 other Republicans in her bid for another term. She will face Deborah Pickett, who beat Ryan Feniger in the Democratic primary. Former Indianapolis mayor candidate Jefferson Shreve won the 6th district Republican primary. This is to replace retiring Congressman Greg Pence. Democrat Cindy Worth was unopposed in her primary. Libertarian James Siniak will join them on the November ballot. And in the 3rd district, former Congressman Marlin Stutzman won the Republican primary to succeed Banks. Kylie Adolph won the Democratic primary. They joined Libertarian Jared Lancaster in the general election. All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team unpacks the results of the primary and gives us a first look ahead to the general election.
Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Ariel Brandy. Good to see you both. We have a lot to unpack from the primaries this week, so let's get right to it, shall we? Mike Braun easily defeated 5 challengers in his bid to be the Republican nomination for governor. Whitley, what does his performance compared to his rivals say about where the Indiana Republican Party is right now?
I mean, let's be honest. The Republican Party had a strong bench of talent in this primary. They had over 5 candidates on the ballot vying for the top spot of governor. And he was able to not only set himself aside from the other 5 candidates, but he was able to win in a way that he was the obvious choice for Republicans. And so I think as everyone is looking toward November, they are going to be in unison with this choice, no matter who their pick was in May, and carry him over the finish line to become the next governor of Indiana.
So, Ariel, Braun's opponents all quickly endorsed him and vowed to support him. Suzanne Crouch is about $3 million still on hand. How worried should Democrats be about that?
I don't think that we have to be worried at all. I mean, honestly, if you look at the numbers, Braun didn't get majority of the votes from his own party. Folks had different picks in that time. But then also, too, there was still a very concerted effort by folks to be able to kind of skew him even getting the nomination by pushing for Democrats to vote and pull a Republican ticket in order to not have Braun be the nomination. Obviously wasn't successful, but I do think that there is something there with saying that Republicans might not have all rallied around him in the beginning. And I don't know if they're going to do that in the general. I think we might have an opportunity for McCormick to pick up some of those voters that don't want a MAGA extremist at the highest office of the state.
Staying with statewide races right now, Democrat Valerie McCray made history Tuesday night. She became the first black woman ever to receive a major party's nomination for U.S. Senate in Indiana. Ariel, how significant is this?
It's very significant, especially for our state and for the Democratic Party. I think it's important to note that right now we're in a very pivotal moment where Black women are running across the state of Indiana and Hoosiers are voting for them. And this is the representation that they're wanting to see. So this is very exciting for us to have another historic moment, but also to be able to put somebody up against Jim Banks, to be able to challenge him going into this race in hopes of us being able to reclaim that nomination and have a Black woman service in the U.S. Senate.
Willie, I'll let you weigh in on that as well. Also, how big of a threat is she to Jim Banks in November?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to applaud her for being the first black woman to really even meet this feat. But the truth is she is going to be defeated. There is no stopping Jim Banks. He is a powerhouse when it comes to fundraising. He has the support not only in Indiana, but in D.C. and also with the PACs and the people. So I don't believe that Valerie is going to be a viable candidate against him and is going to be someone that is actually going to be able to move the needle either way.
All right, well, we'll see what happens there. About 20% of Indiana Republican voters voted for Nikki Haley in the presidential primary, even though Haley suspended her campaign back on March 6th. That's a few months ago now. Whitley, Haley continues to get protest votes in other states as well. On a national level, how worried should Donald Trump be about those voters breaking for someone else in November, or even simply not voting at all?
You know, primaries are all about competition. And so in the primary, whether it's Nikki Haley, Donald Trump, if you're not for Trump, then you want to vote and protest, even though she's withdrawn herself. But the truth of the matter is that when it comes to November, it's about collaboration. It is honestly just about beating Joe Biden. So at this point in time, it doesn't matter where you were in May, because what matters is in November that you're going to be right and tight together and vote for what's in the best interest of this country and of this nation and of the party. So you can expect to see that level of dissension or disagreement or competition in a primary. But when it comes to November, they're going to be right and tight together, as they always have been.
To that point, Ariel, how do Democrats appeal to those voters without alienating the progressive wing of the party?
I think there's still an opportunity for us to be able to speak to the progressive wing of the party. I do think it's important to note that obviously, as Whitley said, you know, during the primary, there is going to be a lot of competition, a lot of protest voting. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the general, we all know what we do not want, and that is another administration with Donald Trump at the helm of it. And we've been able to see that. And even with these protest votes that are happening, I think it provides an opportunity when it comes to the general for voters to really collaborate and figure out who is the best person to represent us process, and that has to be Joe Biden in order for us to move forward as a country.
Whitley, I want to return to you for this next one. Braun says that he wants State Representative Julie McGuire to be his lieutenant governor. Meanwhile, Pastor Mike Bergquist has been campaigning for the job for months. Delegates to the state Republican Party convention, as you know, next month will decide who gets that nomination. So how do you see this playing out, Whitley?
I'm going to be honest. I think that it'll play out in a way where they're going to support who the nominee chooses and selects, because they want not only the governor, but the lieutenant governor to be able to work seamlessly together. And so if in choosing Mike Braun as the gubernatorial candidate, his choice is Ms. Julie McGuire, then they're going to support his choice, because that's what's going to make for a seamless administration. So I know that Mike has been campaigning. I've seen him out on the trail. But in this case, I do believe that the delegates are going to go with the decision of who the gubernatorial candidate wants to be their running mate and their number two.
That being said, Ariel, how much does the choice of running mate affect Democrats' messaging and strategy for November? And have there been any rumblings as to who Jennifer McCormick will pick?
No rumblings yet that I know of, but I do think that, it's great that we didn't have a contested race at the top of our ticket, and that we were able to come forward with Jennifer McCormick. And, going into convention, I think it's important to note that delegates having a choice always makes for great competition. Right now, I know we're really focused on, we have a really competitive attorney general race that we're looking forward to. And I think when it comes to our gubernatorial race, we'll be in a really good place and trust that Jennifer will make the best pick for us in our state, and that we won't have too much competition there. So I think it would be great.
And we'll see what happens as Whitley shakes her head in disagreement. So
I don't agree.
Always good to have you both on the show. You're going to stick around. We have more political headlines coming up after the break. We will be back on the other side to talk more about the potential pause in military aid to Israel. We will be right back. All right, welcome back. Still with us are Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Ariel Brandy. Indiana's primaries weren't the only political developments this week. President Joe Biden says the U.S. will cut off the supply of weapons to Israel if Israel invades the city of Rafah in the Gaza Strip. He already paused the shipment of some 3,500 bombs meant for Israel's military. Ariel, was this the right call?
I do think that this is something that not only the folks in this country have been calling for, but we've seen so many protests around this country that this stop of aid into Israel is something that necessarily did need to happen. I think it's also important to note, too, that some might see this as being a little bit too late, especially for the amount of lives that we've seen lost in this process. And so I think it's important that, yes, while this aid is stopping, I do think that Biden administration needs to understand that a permanent ceasefire is exactly what is being demanded by the people, and that he needs to follow through with in this process.
Whitley, your thoughts?
I don't think Biden has the best foreign affairs experience at this level. We've watched him fumble all of these, the Ukraine and Russia war. We watched him fumble Afghanistan. When it comes to this, and this is a very serious topic, and I know that specifically on the left and progressives are wanting not only a ceasefire, but they're wanting a lot of other things when it comes to what's happening between Israel and Gaza. But the truth is that Israel is our ally, and they have been our ally. And a lot of the moves and maneuvers that he's doing now as we get closer to November is beginning to paint Israel as an enemy. And so you cannot have someone that is an ally that is relying on you in a time of need and you not support and stand with them. And so I think in this time, Biden has caved into the progressives of the party, into all of the protests of the people who want him to do all of these different things, the further left faction of the party, as opposed to standing with our allies who've stood with us.
Whitley, does the U.S. have a moral obligation, though, to stop the death and starvation of civilians in Gaza?
Absolutely. And that's why they have been providing aid to Gaza in particular about this topic. They've been providing water. They've been providing food, and other nations as well has also been providing aid. I understand wanting the ceasefire, but you cannot have someone come attack you, punch you, and then you retaliate and they say that you're punching too hard. I understand that there are other things happening within the area and that this conflict has been going on for years and years. And I do believe that there should be talks about coming to a resolution. But at the same time, I think that we have an obligation to our allies to support them. We have an obligation to Israel in the relationship that we've built over.
Ariel, I want to give you the last word here, though. I'm running out of time. 30 seconds left. How does this hurt or help the president going forward, politically speaking?
I think it's uncertain right now. I think right now, for progressives on the left side of the party, this is something that they absolutely have wanted. Providing aid to Palestinians right now in Gaza is and should be a top priority, especially for what we're seeing in that country. No longer should we be supporting or trying to push a country into starvation and the dying off of their people in generations. I mean, we have to come to some sort of resolution for this.
Okay. We will leave it there. Ladies, good conversation. Always good to see you both. Love having you on the show. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning, as always, at 9:30. And be sure to tune in at 11 o'clock right here on Wish TV. The Hill Sunday with Chris Steyerwalt will join you then. And have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.